Hello literature connoisseurs. Let's begin chapter 18 of Left Behind. The chapter begins as Steve leads Buck to his office to show it to him. A comment about the two witnesses at the Wailing Wall gets made, but Buck says he's not interested in them. Buck instead argues that Steve is leaving and calls him the only sane one in the office. Steve, the guy that broke the law by falsifying his identity and obstructing an investigation, we are to believe is the only sane one. Buck is more afraid that he won't get the favoritism that he gets by hiding behind Steve. As a boss, he will actually have to work for a living. Steve keeps pressuring Buck and makes him realize that if he doesn't take the job, then someone that resents him will take it and give Buck all the bad assignments. Buck whines about Steve leaving, and Steve explains that Nicolae is too important and that's why he's leaving to be his press secretary. It gets mentioned that Nicolae is bigger than anything and he's big enough to be king of the world. His charisma and gay Christian Robert Redford looks, as he walks around like a walking, unimpressive, encyclopedia. Is not impressive except to gullible Christians hiding that they are attracted to Robert Redford. There is nothing wrong with liking people of the same sex except that Christians become hypocritical that they berate others for their attractions while ignoring that they behave the same way. You can't be gay for Jesus and then state that Jesus hates all gays. That would include you also. The secretary enters and tells them to watch the television. They turn on a CNN broadcast as it explains that the witnesses are preaching that Jesus is the Messiah. A heckler mocks them by asking if they know so much, then why they were not taken in the supposed retour. They quote a random verse from the Bible that does not refute the heckler but shows their lack of transparency. This is the first of many encounters where these two supposed witnesses cannot speak normally or rationally, but like two parrots just spout random Bible verses that have no real meaning. Like Nicolae, these two are so lame that it shows how lame the author's God is. This shows how followers of their God are nothing but mere parrots that incoherently quote the Bible. This is more proof why someone should not be a Christian. Two zealots attack them after mounting tension, but as they charge in with a gun and knife, both trip and fall dead. The one called Moishi makes no sense as he says, "Come close, but don't come close," said the Lord of hosts. The verses in Revelation said that if anyone attacks them, then fire will come from their mouths and kill their attackers. Which does not happen here. So the authors seem to think the Bible verses are absurd and that they need to rewrite things to cancel out the supernatural. It's almost like the authors don't believe in the supernatural and know it's bunk. The authors will recant later and have their attackers getting burned because of outrage from Christians that they are twisting what the Bible predicts. It's just really telling how absurd they think the miracles of the Bible and yet are forced to use them to keep Christians happy. So the bodies get cleared away and everyone is amazed that the attackers just tripped and died for some reason. Ignoring that an enemy sniper could have shot them or other possible explanations that are mundane. The CNN reporter says that the two have continued preaching that Jesus is Lord of Lords and blah blah blah. That no reporter would say. A comment gets said saying what a couple of kooks, but it never gets mentioned if he means the witnesses or the dead attackers. Even Buck points this out and the comment gets overlooked. Buck then makes another comment saying that weird things happen in Israel that cannot be explained. Which is absolute nonsense. Just watching the news shows this. Israel gets attacked, Israel retaliates, and the media berates Israel. Then a brief pause and repeat. No otherworldly supernatural events happening. Not sure which fantasy land the authors are living in. Buck says he needs to leave and Steve presses him about the job offer. Buck brushes him off saying that he has 24 hours to reply. Steve objects, but Buck is more interested in a meeting with Hattie. Scene changes to Rayford and Chloe as they arrive in New York. They wonder if Hattie is going to show up and meet with them, but Chloe is skeptical. Chloe says that if she were Hattie then she would not show up. Rayford makes a snarky comment and Chloe reminds him that he should respect Hattie and not berate her. There is no greater hate than Christian love. Rayford reflects on this and agrees that he should not be putting Hattie down because she is stupid. He realizes he only cared about her looks when he had his imaginary affair with her. He asks her why she would not show up if she were Hattie. Chloe explains that it is obvious that he is gonna break up with her. Ignoring that Hattie thought of him as only a friend and the affair was all pretend in Rayford's mind. Chloe then says he's gonna try to convert her to his new religion. This makes Rayford reply with a sassy comment saying that she makes his plan sound cheap. Which it is absolutely cheap. The worst part is to blame Hattie because of Rayford's imagination. To summarize this whole mess, first, Rayford has an imaginary affair with Hattie, who has no idea about it but thinks of him as a friend. Then he decides to blame her because he had a make-believe affair in his head and blames her for his wife disappearing in the rapture. He feels justified in treating her like shit because it's her fault that she never knew about the pretend affair, but he wants to project his faults onto her. Now he wants to end the imaginary affair, and end the friendship, because her intelligence is not as big as his ego. He wants to try and get her to convert to his religion, but not because he cares about her, but he wants his daughter to overhear his preaching in order to emotionally manipulate his daughter into converting. Wow! The narcissism, the judgmental attitudes, and the use of religion to try and justify his abhorrent behavior. They have perfectly described how Christians act 1000%. At least the authors are being honest for once. This drama nonsense takes an unrealistic turn as Rayford and Chloe change the story between themselves. Chloe states that Hattie won't want religion because she wanted an affair with Rayford. Even though Hattie never said that, Hattie said the opposite. A few chapters ago Hattie stated that she thought of Rayford only as a friend, but she saw no chance that they would ever be a couple. Now Rayford and Chloe try to turn her into a willing participant in Rayford's imagination. Thou shalt not lie. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Nah. Doesn't apply to Christians. They are too busy lying for Jesus. Narcissism is a hell of a drug. Rayford even lies to himself by saying that doesn't him telling her about religion actually shows that he genuinely cares? No, it doesn't, especially after you have admitted that you care nothing about her but want to use her to lure Chloe in. Not sure if Chloe listened into the phone conversation between Hattie and Rayford where Hattie expressed her true feelings, but now Rayford has to be dishonest in order to paint Hattie as being a bad guy. I mean, the whole idea of this imaginary affair in Rayford's head is preposterous, but now rather than simply acknowledging that it was fake, they need to twist things to make an innocent woman guilty. Perhaps the authors want to paint on Hattie the scarlet letter. Typical of Christians, like when they held witch trials. To Christians, the truth does not matter. This may be a PSA on how to not witness to someone about your religion, but it honestly bogs down the story with useless drama. This again proves why this series is mocked as being stupid by both theists and non. Scene changes to Buck as he meets with Hattie. Hattie gets Buck to call and see if she can be introduced to Nicolae. Nicolae graciously agreed, but only for a few minutes because of how tight his schedule is. Buck feels ashamed for doing this and feels that it ruins his reputation as a journalist. Hattie questions him about it because of the way he is acting towards her. Buck lies and says it's no big deal. When they arrive, Buck gets asked to meet with Nicolae by himself first. Buck guesses that Nicolae will berate him for bringing Hattie to see him. Nicolae is busy watching the news about the attack on the two witnesses in Jerusalem. Nicolae remarks at how strange it is, but Buck just comments that it is a common occurrence there. Nicolae then reveals that it is being said that the attackers died of heart attacks. He wonders what could have caused it and wondered if it were out of fear. The walking encyclopedia seems foolish here because any number of things could have happened. We are not told about any discovery from a full autopsy, which could end a lot of speculation. So far, we have nothing but hearsay about what may have happened. A sniper could have shot the attackers with a poison dart that caused their heart attacks. This could have been done by the Israeli Defense Force, or IDF, because it was already stated that many zealots consider the area to be sacred. rather than having two attackers cause a riot. The IDF could have chosen to neutralize the targets. One could argue that maybe the attack was staged to make the two men seem like the two witnesses to draw attention. If two people wanted to pretend to be the people in the Bible in order to draw a crowd, then faking an attack and making it appear as if something weird and possibly supernatural happened. Another theory might be that the attackers took poison, expecting to die rather than face capture, and as they charged at the two witnesses, their increased metabolism made the poison act faster than they expected. These are just two possibilities that don't need a God intervening. God could be a possibility, but considering that the Bible states that any attackers would be burned by fire from the mouths of the two witnesses. Since that did not happen here, it fails to fit the prophecy of the two witnesses. The authors are again proving the Bible is wrong if they push that it is a fulfillment of the Bible. Nicolae then asks Buck about his choosing Steve to be his press secretary. Buck says that it hurts the paper he works for, but Nicolae counters that he did this to put Buck in the position he wants him in. Nicolae laughs that he is using people the way Jonathan S. uses people. Buck brings up the rival that he had the fight with for some strange reason. He asks if Nicolae knew about Eric dying. Nicolae does not answer as he goes to meet with Hattie. Buck gets a phone call and Steve's old secretary tells him that Eric's wife called wanting to talk to him. Buck gets the number then returns as Nicolae finishes up with Hattie. Hattie leaves with Buck and tells him that Nicolae gave her his phone number. Buck looks at the number then sneaks away to trace the number and calls Eric's wife. She tells Buck that she does not believe that Eric died by accident. Buck reassures her, then calls a supposed friend with the phone company and asks him to trace the number Nicolae gave Hattie. The number is a private number for the Secretary General of the United Nations. This makes Buck call Steve and asks about it. Steve reveals that Nicolae was able to bribe the current Secretary General of the United Nations with the Israeli formula, so Nicolae would take his place. This was supposed to get revealed tomorrow at a press conference. Buck becomes suspicious and tells Steve that he is accepting the job offer. This ends chapter 18 of Left Behind. See you next time for chapter 19.